I picked up on the second ring. It was 11:47 at night, and I hadn't been asleep. Old men don't sleep the way they used to. I was sitting in my recliner with the television on low, watching nothing in particular, when my phone lit up on the side table. My daughter's name on the screen. I answered without thinking. "Papa." Her voice was barely above a whisper. I sat up straight. In 63 years of living, I have learned that a daughter does not call her father at midnight in a whisper, unless something is very wrong. "Emily." "What is it?" "I need you to come." A pause. I could hear her breathing, shallow and fast. "But don't call ahead. Don't let Brandon know you're coming. Please, Papa, just come." "Are you hurt?" Silence on the line. That silence told me everything. "I'm coming right now," I said, "and I'm calling 911 on my way." "No, Papa, please don't. They'll—" But I had already grabbed my keys off the kitchen counter. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. Not fear, not confusion. Something older and quieter than both of those things. A father's certainty, the kind that sits in your chest like a stone and tells you to move. I called 911 as I backed out of my driveway. I told the dispatcher my daughter's address, told her my daughter had called me in distress and would not tell me if she was injured. The dispatcher asked me to stay on the line. I told her I was 40 minutes away and driving. She told me a unit would be sent ahead. I drove faster than I should have. Emily had married Brandon Holt 2 years earlier. He was 34, well-dressed, employed at his family's real estate development company. At the wedding, he had shaken my hand with both of his and called me sir. I remember thinking at the time that men who work too hard to impress you in the first 5 minutes are usually working to hide something. But Emily loved him, and Emily was 29 years old and capable of making her own choices. And so I smiled and I danced with my daughter, and I let myself believe I was wrong about him. I was not wrong about him. The trouble started small, the way it always does. Emily stopped calling as often. When I visited, she seemed quieter. She laughed at different things, or stopped laughing at things she used to find funny. Little erasures. I noticed them the way you notice a photograph fading not all at once, but in the accumulation of small absences. Then 6 months ago, she told me she had left her job at the graphic design firm. Brandon felt it was better, she said. Better for the household, better for their schedule. She said it in a way that made it sound like she was reciting something she had been told to memorize. I said nothing. I waited. I told myself she was an adult. I should not have waited. Brandon's mother, Connie Holt, lived in the house with them. That had been presented to Emily as temporary, just until Connie got back on her feet after the divorce. Just a few months. 2 years later, Connie still had her own bedroom down the hall and her own opinions about how the household should be run, which is to say how Emily should be managed. From what Emily had told me in small pieces over many months, Connie had strong views about everything from how Emily cooked to who Emily was allowed to speak with. I pulled off the highway onto the county road that led to their neighborhood. My hands were steady on the wheel. That surprised me, looking back on it. I suppose by then there was nothing left in me to shake. Their house was a large colonial on a cul-de-sac, white with black shutters, the kind of house that looks like a Christmas card from the outside. Every light on the ground floor was burning. It was nearly 1 in the morning. I parked at the curb and walked to the front door. Before I could knock, it opened. Connie Holt stood in the doorway in a silk robe, her arms crossed, her expression the particular kind of cold that some people spend a lifetime perfecting. She was 61 years old, silver-haired, and she looked at me the way a person looks at something they have already decided to discard. "It's past midnight," she said. "My daughter called me. I'm here to see her. Emily is fine. She's resting. You can come back in the morning." I looked at her for a moment. "Step aside, please." "Excuse me?" I said, "Step aside. My daughter called me. I am going to see my daughter." Connie smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Brandon," she called over her shoulder, without taking her eyes off me. "Brandon, come down here." Brandon appeared at the top of the stairs in sweatpants and a t-shirt. He was a large man, broad-shouldered. He came down slowly, taking his time, and positioned himself just behind his mother. "Walter," he said. He always called me Walter, never Mr. Kane. "Never, sir, not anymore. You should have called first." My daughter asked me not to. I kept my voice level. Where is she? She's asleep. She gets anxious sometimes. She probably wasn't even fully awake when she called you. He said it with a slight smile. The kind designed to make you feel like you're overreacting. You know how she gets. I did not know how she gets. My daughter, before she married this man, had been one of the steadiest people I knew. Brandon, I said, I am going to ask you one time to take me to my daughter. After that, the conversation changes. He and his mother exchanged a glance. The kind of glance that people who have rehearsed this exchange before share with each other. I think you should go home, Walter. Get some rest. Emily will call you tomorrow. I heard tires on the pavement behind me. I turned. A patrol car was rolling slowly up the cul-de-sac, headlights cutting through the dark. I had never been so glad to see a set of flashing lights in my life. 2 officers got out, a man and a woman, both young. The woman spoke first. We received a welfare call. Is everything all right here? No, I said. My daughter called me in distress from inside this home. I have not been permitted to see her. I am her father. Brandon moved fast. He was down the front steps before I could process it, walking toward the officers with his hands open and his face rearranged into something cooperative and concerned. Officers, I'm sorry about this. My father-in-law has been worried about my wife. She has anxiety. She sometimes makes calls late at night that she doesn't remember making. She's perfectly fine. She's upstairs sleeping. He shook his head with a rueful half-smile. We've been through this before with him. He means well. The male officer looked at me. I said, I would like someone to physically check on my daughter. Sir, if your daughter is inside, and she is inside. That is precisely why I am asking someone to check on her. The female officer said, Is your daughter home, sir? To Brandon. She's upstairs, he said. I'd like to go up and speak with her directly, she said. Connie, still in the doorway, said, This is private property. You don't have... Mom, Brandon said quietly. A warning. He turned back to the officer. Of course. Come in. They went inside. I followed. Brandon looked like he wanted to stop me but thought better of it with 2 officers present. The officer went upstairs. I stood in the foyer with Brandon and Connie and the male officer. Connie stared at me with an expression that was somewhere between fury and amusement. Brandon stared at the floor. 3 minutes passed. They were the longest 3 minutes of my recent memory. Then the female officer appeared at the top of the stairs. Her face had changed. Sir, she said to her partner, I need you up here. I started for the stairs. Brandon moved to block me. Sir, the male officer said to me, please wait here. That is my daughter. Sir, I understand. Please wait here. I stood at the bottom of those stairs for 8 minutes. I counted. I counted because it was the only thing I could do with my hands. When the officer came back down, she was on her radio. She looked at me and said, We've called for an ambulance. Your daughter is conscious, but she has injuries consistent with a physical altercation. She's asking for you. I went up the stairs. Nobody stopped me. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed in the guest room, not the master bedroom, and the sight of her stopped me in the doorway. She had a bruise along the left side of her jaw that had bloomed into something purple and yellow at its edges, which told me it was not new. There were older marks on her forearms. She had been wearing long sleeves every time I had seen her for months. I crossed the room and sat beside her and put my arms around her, and she pressed her face into my shoulder like she was 7 years old again, and she shook without making a sound. I've got you, I said. I've got you now. I was scared to call, she whispered. I was scared what he'd do if I called. You did the right thing. You did exactly the right thing. She pulled back and looked at me. Her eyes were swollen. What's going to happen? The right things, I said. The right things are going to happen. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. While the paramedics were with Emily, I went back downstairs. Brandon was in the living room with both officers. Connie was nowhere I could see. Brandon's face, now that the performance had dropped, was a study in calculation. He was already working out the angles, already figuring the story he was going to tell. He looked at me with something that might have been defiance. Whatever she said. Don't, I said. You have no idea what it's been like. She's not stable, Walter. Ask anyone. Ask her doctor. I said don't. One of the officers looked at me. Sir, do you know of any prior incidents? I know of several things I should have acted on sooner, I said. I'll be giving a full statement, Brandon said. You can't prove anything. I looked at him for a long moment. Brandon, I said, I spent 22 years as an assistant district attorney for this state. Before that, I spent 8 years as a public defender. I know exactly what can be proved, and exactly how. I know which charges stick, and which ones don't. I know the judges in this county by their first names. I know the DA currently sitting in that office. We have lunch every few months. I paused. And I know that the first person to give a statement, and the most credible person to give a statement, is going to set the tone for everything that follows. So I would strongly suggest that you stop talking and call an attorney. Tonight, right now. The room was very quiet. Brandon sat down on the couch. He sat down slowly, like something in him had gone slack. Connie appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. She had changed out of her robe. She looked at me. For the first time that night, the coldness in her face had something else underneath it. Something I recognized from a long career of watching people's certainty leave them. Emily was taken to the hospital. I rode in the ambulance with her and held her hand, and she slept, finally, with her head against my arm. At the hospital, they documented everything. Photographs, notes. The ER physician, a woman named Dr. Okafor, spoke to me afterward in the hallway. She was careful and precise, and she told me that what she had observed was consistent with ongoing physical abuse over a period of months. She said Emily had been in some weeks earlier with a different complaint, and that certain things she was seeing now made that earlier visit look different in retrospect. She said she wished she had asked different questions then. I told her I understood the feeling. I gave my statement to the police that night. All of it. Every instance Emily had mentioned to me, every detail I had observed and told myself was not my place to intervene on. I gave them the names of Emily's former coworkers, her former friends, the people Connie and Brandon had systematically cut her off from over 2 years. The officers were thorough. They listened. Brandon was arrested that morning on charges of domestic battery and false imprisonment. Connie was arrested on a charge related to her role in preventing my access to Emily, and in a pattern of conduct the investigators would spend the next several weeks building a case around. I know people think the legal system moves slowly. It does. It is imperfect and frustrating, and sometimes it fails people who deserve better. I am under no illusion about that. I spent decades inside that system. But it also, when the pieces are in place and the right people are paying attention, does what it is supposed to do. And I made sure the right people were paying attention. Emily stayed with me while the case moved forward. We converted the spare bedroom, the one her mother used to use, before I lost her 12 years ago, into something that was Emily's. She picked the paint color, a soft blue-green, like shallow water. She put her drafting table in the corner and started drawing again for the first time in 2 years. She was quiet for a long time. That was all right. I did not need her to talk. I needed her to eat and sleep and sit in the sun on the back porch and remember what it felt like to be a person who was not afraid. Slowly, she did. There were hard days. Days when she blamed herself, which is the cruelest trick that this kind of experience plays on a person, convincing them that what was done to them was their own failure. I sat with her on those days. I did not argue with her or try to logic her out of it. I just sat with her and let her know that I was there and that I was not leaving. Why didn't I leave sooner? She asked me once, about a month in. Because leaving is the most dangerous time, I said. Because he had convinced you that you were the problem. Because you were isolated from everyone who would have told you otherwise. Because it takes more courage to leave than most people who have never been through it can understand. She looked at me. You're not angry at me? I am angry, I said. I am angry every single day, but not at you. Not for 1 second. She put her head on my shoulder. We sat there on the back porch as the evening came in. I thought about the night she was born, how I had held her in the hospital, this tiny, impossible person, and made her a private promise. The kind of promise you don't say out loud, that I would always come, that no door would stop me, that whatever came for her, I would come for her first. I had been late keeping that promise. That was something I would carry for the rest of my life. But I had kept it. The trial took 8 months. I won't walk through all of it, the delays, the motions, The days when Brandon's attorney tried to paint Emily as unstable, and I watched my daughter sit very still in that courtroom and breathe. She was steadier than I expected. Steadier, I think, than even she had expected. On the day the verdict came in, I was sitting 3 rows behind the prosecution table. Emily was beside me. She had insisted on being there. When the 4-person stood up, the courtroom was absolutely silent in the way that courtrooms get when everyone in them knows something important is about to happen. Guilty, on the primary charge, and on 2 of the 4 secondary charges. Connie, tried separately on the lesser charges, accepted a plea arrangement that included probation and mandatory participation in a program I won't name here, but which she would find extremely uncomfortable. That was enough. Emily said it was enough, and it was her call to make. Brandon was sentenced to 4 years. He would serve something less than that. I knew that going in. Emily knew it too. The number was not the point. The point was the record. The point was the documentation. The point was that the story, from this day forward, had a clear accounting of what had happened and who had done it. Afterward, Emily and I drove home in silence for a while. The afternoon was clear and bright, the kind of late spring day that doesn't seem to know or care about the weight of indoor things. She had her window down and her arm resting on the door. "How do you feel?" I asked her. She considered the question seriously, the way she always has since she was small. Emily has never given a careless answer to a serious question. "Like something that was pressing on me isn't there anymore," she said. "Like I forgot what it felt like to breathe without bracing." I nodded. "Papa." She turned to look at me. "When you drove to the house that night, were you scared?" I thought about it honestly. "No," I said. "I was not scared. I was moving." "What's the difference?" "Fear asks you to stop and think," I said. "Whatever I felt that night didn't ask me anything. It just moved me." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm sorry I waited so long to call." "You called," I said. "That's everything." We got home as the sun was going low. Emily made tea. I sat in my recliner, the same one I'd been sitting in when the phone rang 8 months ago, and I let the tiredness come. The good kind. The kind that follows something finished. My daughter brought me my cup and sat across from me, tucking her feet under her the way she used to as a teenager. She looked younger than she had in 2 years. Not younger like she had been erased, but younger like something that had been pressing her down had let go, and she was finding her own shape again. Outside the window, the yard was going gold and quiet in the last of the afternoon light. She said, "What do we do now?" I looked at my daughter, her blue-green room down the hall, her drafting table in the corner, her tea cooling in her hands, and I thought, this is what we do. "We have dinner," I said, "and then tomorrow we figure out the next thing." She smiled. A real one. The one I had been waiting 8 months to see come back. "Okay, Papa," she said. And that was enough.